Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group. It is the bi-weekly sync. Today is June 4th, and we do have a lot of stuff to cover again today, like we typically have in these community calls. So we're going to start do a quick update on the SharePoint Framework, what's latest on that one. I'm not going to actually talk about too much on that one, no demos this time, not significantly updates since the last time, but we're going to recap the roadmap and maybe some high-level timelines on the upcoming steps. Then we have a big list of patterns and practices updates. So basically our open source projects and what's happening there, what's the latest on PnPjs, Office 365 CLI, SPFx User Controls, Human Generator, and PnP Search Solution. Every one of them are somehow related on client-side development and quite often used with SharePoint Framework or in Microsoft Teams development as well. So super cool stuff. And we have also a lot of new community samples. Thank you for those advanced. So Hugo is going to cover those after that quick list of projects. And then we have two demos today. So Sudharsan will start. Super cool SharePoint user profile property sync coordinator or admin tool with SharePoint Framework and Azure function. Really cool stuff available in the samples as well. And then Sergei and Andrew, we're going to talk about CSS in JavaScript with SharePoint Framework. So really cool topics as well. Most likely, at least the second demo with Sergei and Andrew is going to take slightly more than 15 minutes or 20. It's going to take 20 to 25 minutes. So that's why we only have two demos today. But let's see how it goes. I'm trying to be, again, relatively fast on the intros so we don't lose too much time from the demos because demos are always cool. Now, opportunities to participate in SPFx JavaScript JS special interest groups. Just recapping, if you're interested on having visibility for yourself, for your solutions or samples or structures, please volunteer to do a SharePoint Framework demo or at PnP demo. So at PnP being the PnPjs, which doesn't have to be used in SharePoint Framework. It could be used in Node.js as well, which is an interesting dimension on there. But basically volunteer for any of the PnP team members and then say that, hey, I want to do a demo, and we'll schedule to a community call and give you a spot of 15 minutes typically, unless you need more time to do a demo. Obviously, the demo should not be product sales pitches, but if you have really cool solution architecture, and you concentrate on explaining your learnings related on the existing implementation of what you've done, and that's what we're looking for. Or if you have an open source solution or you share the sample, and those are super welcome in here. Really important thing as well, contribute in GitHub. We do have multiple GitHub repos and where you can actually participate and help us with the issues and help us with the pull request. And the most important part, provide feedback. Let us know what works, what doesn't work, where do you need help, so we're able to address that. Super important thing I need to know as an example, what's holding you back if you're not using SharePoint Framework? If you're not using SharePoint Framework for Microsoft Teams development, why not? Can we help you on that? What's the missing gap? So we're able to address the product gaps and also address the guidance gaps, because that's why these calls exist. So please keep that feedback coming. Now, quick recap on our resources and assets. We have two different YouTube channels. We have the official Microsoft 365 developer videos, which is the official Microsoft 365 YouTube channel where we have build videos and all of the community call videos across Microsoft 365 Dev. We have the Microsoft 365 SharePoint community video channel where we have also MVP videos and specific playlists from MVPs and community members. We have multiple different open source assets and options available. We have sample galleries for team samples, list formatting samples, web part samples. And then if you're looking into or basically concluding that, wait, there's too many URLs, I can't handle this, go to the AKMS M365 PnP, which is the welcome page for Microsoft 365 patterns and practices. And from there, you'll find all of the different things what we do. So links to the YouTube videos, links to all of the projects and all of that. So that's the one URL to remember. Now, quick also promo here. If you're not familiar with contributing in a GitHub or you're afraid of doing that and you don't quite know how to get started, we do have our Sharing is Caring initiative run by David Warner and Hugo Bernier, where basically they help you to get started really from scratch. So basically, you don't have to have any previous knowledge on GitHub usage or contributions usage. This initiative is there to help you to learn how to get started. And they have specific training sessions. So the next time, the first time contributor sessions are in June 18th, 19th, and 22nd. So if you go AKMS Sharing is Caring, you can see and download the invites and register to those sessions. So super, super valuable thing to do. Thank you, David and Hugo, for running the show in here. Now, we do have also next SharePoint monthly community call coming. Just to promote that one, obviously in the monthly community call, we as a Microsoft, we present fully the call, and we typically have one specific topic in the monthly community call for 40 minutes. The next Tuesday, we have a really cool topic, which is Microsoft Search UX customizations, out of the box customization. So search box verticals and refiners for SharePoint content. And this is something which is partly released and already in the ongoing virtual conferences, but we basically demo what's possible, what's coming, what are the options to use out of the box capabilities of creating a modern SharePoint search experience. So really, really cool stuff as well. So you don't want to miss that. That's on next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Now, quick update on SharePoint Framework side. So next version will be SharePoint Framework 1.11. It is currently scheduled to happen in early July. This is probably the first time I'm actually saying explicit timelines for it, but yeah. So we're targeting that to happen in July due to numerous reasons. There are certain dependencies related on the SharePoint Framework support in the store. And that gives you an insight that we're actually targeting to open up the SharePoint Framework store, AppSource also for SharePoint Framework, starting in July. And that's really, really cool. So you will see more announcements of this one. But basically what it means is that you as a ISV or a developer, you can implement your own SharePoint Framework web part and put it in AppSource or in the Office store and have it as an SPFx solution available for any people in the world. And we support also, well, not any people of the world, but anyway, our customers. And we also support SPFx-based Microsoft Teams extensibility in this scenario. So you can definitely target, implement SharePoint Framework-based Microsoft Teams tab or a personal application and ship it into AppSource. And then you're able to actually get money, hopefully, from a license model from these customers. So really cool stuff coming in July. Plenty of other topics in the roadmap. Roadmap is massive, but we're trying to get to those stuff sooner or later. Now, one of our big priorities for the upcoming months is also the reliability, and then the let's say the quality of the code and quality of the service. So we're really focusing on helping your life and making the service more reliable as well. You can always improve reliability and performance. Now, let's go to the PnPjs client-side libraries. So PnPjs client-side libraries, the 2.06 PnPjs is in version 2. Version 2.06 is scheduled to happen on June 5th. The new statement on the IE polyfills with the 8th of May release, probably, not the August release. We'll need to expand these dates in the future, certainly. Thank you, everybody, for your feedback. Absolutely. There are really nice setup videos available already previously released by David, how to get started on using PnPjs v2. If you're using PnP JavaScript Core or the PnPjs version 1, please update to the PnP v2. It's much more performant and bundled sizes are much more smaller. Patrick is still on a family leave, so Julian, Andrew, and the team will handle things. Patrick will be back in July. Now, Office 365 CLI, quick update in here. The latest version is 2.10. The latest things is really around helping to upgrade the SharePoint Framework projects. We are already testing towards the SharePoint Framework 1.11 release, so that whenever the SharePoint Framework 1.11 will be out, planned to happen in July, there will be an upgrade command, so updated already for Office 365 CLI. So that's going to help you to make the upgrades to the SharePoint Framework latest version as easy as possible. And the really cool part is the code tour, which is going to help you to basically perform the needed changes within your solution. There's also other updates in here related on how to, for example, add a Microsoft to-do list or add a to-do task, and then other operations and more sample scripts available how to get started on that one. So really cool stuff. SPFx reusable components, not that much new here, not a new version. There is a significant amount of these controls already available in both React controls and property controls. So please do take advantage of these, the latest versions being 1.18. So these are free to take advantage or free to use by you in your solutions as well. So super useful thing and increases your productivity enormously. So really cool stuff. PnP SPFx Generator. The latest version being 1.11.1. So there's a small update on this one. The Angular 9 elements potentially in future, Babylon.js potentially in future, React.js hook support for new web parts. So a new version of React is supporting React hooks, and as part of the open source version of the Yeoman generator, that React packages will be actually having that kind of implementation available if you choose that option. So really cool stuff coming on this side as well. Have a look on this. It is really useful. Yeoman generator, it increases your productivity as well, like all of these products are doing, or projects are doing. That's what they're targeted to do. Now, PnP Modern Search. I know that Frank Corner couldn't actually join today, but AKMS PnP Search, we're including an update of this one in this project, in this solution as well. But 3.13 release happened pretty recently. May 2020 is the release available. Now, new stuff, new optimization. This is the last version using the existing, let's say, code branch. And right now, no new features would be requested from the community, only bug fixes. So there's an ongoing refactoring happening, and there's going to be a new major version, hopefully released relatively soon in July, August timeframe, with the additional capabilities. So really cool stuff on this side as well. Now, PnP SPF examples. Hugo, I know that you're on the call.
Yes. I am. Thank you. So we've had a lot of samples since our last meeting. We have a new announcements application customizer by Martin Cyr. He actually took samples from Waldeck and Sudharsan and looked at the SharePoint Starter Kit alert notification component, and he actually created a new component that creates announcements on the top of the page. Arjun modified the SPFx Festival and updated it. This was originally an update from or extension from Anoop. And then we have a whole bunch of new web parts at aka.ms SPFx web parts. One is from Siddharth, which allows you to create Teams messages. So it shows, the teams you belong to, the channels, and allows you to send messages to it. There's a new, really cool word on Scramble game from Neil Barkina. I have to admit, I spent way too much time when I was testing it. It was really fun. I encourage you to play with it. There's a new update from Lewis I just pushed in this morning. That allows you to create, it's an Outlook add-in that allows you to create to-do tasks from within Outlook. And then we have updates from Zach Roberts with React My Groups, Bo George, who's going to be demoing this in 2 weeks, I believe, which is his page hierarchy component. Joao updated his MyTask web part. Zach Roberts updated his React My Groups web part, and I updated David Warner and Bo Cameron's web part called Theme Manager that allows you to update themes on modern pages. That's it for me, Vesa. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Hugo, on that one. It's really great to see all of this contribution, and in every single bi-week, we have more and more stuff available. And again, just to remind on these solutions, so these are all MIT licensed. They are there for you to take advantage, or demonstrating a pattern, or showing how things work. And then you can learn from them, and then you can implement your customer cases or customer projects based on the learnings of their solutions. And this way, we all learn from each other, and that's a win-win for everybody. That's really the purpose of what we're doing here. Now, let's move into the demo section. Pretty much actually not too bad from a timing perspective. I was talking super fast, but hopefully you were able to follow up on the intro. So Sudharsan, I think you're on the call.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sudharsan Kesavanarayanan, and I'm working as a SharePoint consultant at NTT based in Singapore. And my blog site is spknowledge.com and some of my social accounts here. So today we are going to see about a solution called SPUPS Property Sync where I have designed this solution using SharePoint Framework version 1.10, and I have been using MS Graph API and Azure Function. So some of the features like there is a flexible property mapping where the administrator can choose which property to map and then which property to sync, whether it can be a manual or a template based. And there is also bulk sync features available. And this solution is access control based on a SharePoint group. Only the site administrator can provide the SharePoint groups. Only the members on this group can access this solution. And the final thing is I have used PnP PowerShell using Azure Function to handle the updation in the SharePoint user profile service. Supporting artifacts, I have used PnP SP and PnP Graph and SPFx property controls and controls React. And I have also used React editable table to provide the dynamic inline editing. And there are two other links I have been used for reference. So one is the link from the article from Vesa, which was a couple of years ago, where I have used for my solution some of the information I captured here, and mainly on the properties which are automatically synchronized and the property names, and also the JSON format, which I have used the same JSON format used here with slight modifications. And another URL is a great video by Paulo on how to use the PnP PowerShell in Azure Functions. Okay, let's go to the demo. So this is the profile property sync page where I have already added this to the SharePoint page. So first I would like to show the properties. So this property will be available only to the site administrators. And if you go back as a normal user, and when you try to edit this, so it is restricted. So only the site administrator will be able to edit the properties. And the properties like the library, so where the bulk templates and all the templates and other files are stored. And there is a input box for giving the Azure function URL, which is used to update the UPS property. And there is a toggle where you can configure whether you have stored the credentials directly in Azure app settings, function app settings, or you have used the certificate method. So when you have created the certificate, then you can use the option use the certificate. So there will be a flag which I'll be showing later on. And the date format where all the details shown here will use the same date format. And these are all the SharePoint groups who will have access to this solution. So not all the users will have access to this. Only the members of this group will have access. And the last is the use page full width. And since I have used this in the SharePoint page, it is using the full width, which is a communication site. And in case if you want to test this solution in a workbench, then you can use this option so that it will use the full page. I have used the workbench customizer functionality to make it as a full page. So the first one is the property mapping, where you can see all the properties which are predefined. So the first, when you add this web part to the page, it will start creating the supporting list, the property mapping list, and there is one other list where I will store the details of the job. So the list will have the default properties which are enabled by default, and you can also add more properties, the custom properties, whichever you have created in your Azure AD. So you can choose whichever properties you can synchronize, and then you can generate a JSON file or CSV file. Both are supported. So you can just toggle it and then can just generate the JSON file. And you can also create a CSV file. So this is a sample CSV file where I have used only 3 or 4 properties: city, state, postal code, and country. And this user ID by default, it will be appended to the property file, which is the unique identifier to update the property. This is the sample CSV file. And this will be the sample JSON file. where you can replicate this code, and then you can add more user properties and everything. So here I have allowed, I have used the people picker where I have allowed only 20 people. Maybe you can allow more. So let me choose one user. So there are two options. You can initialize the manual properties or the get Azure properties. So let me choose just 4 properties as of now for demonstration. So when you click initialize manual properties, you will be able to key in the property values. And when you click on get Azure properties, so automatically the data from Azure will be pulled and then displayed it here. So if you see the Azure property here, city, state, and everything will be same here, city, state. So I have also loaded the relevance. Here I have added custom property, city, state. These are all not the default properties, but this solution, you can also use the default properties to update. For example, department, office location, mobile number, and everything. So as of now, these properties are not, it's cleared. So let me try to update it. So when you click update user properties, so that's it, the data is pushed back. And then the last tab, sync status, will show you the status of the syncing process. So it is submitted. So once the Azure function automatically took the data, and then it will, so we have triggered the Azure function. So maybe it will take a few minutes to update it. Maybe we can check back later. So the next option is, bulk sync, where you can select the data file, whether CSV or JSON. So I'll just upload the sample file. So I'll just use CSV. So click upload. So it will automatically provide what are all the details, what are all the user details you have added in the CSV file. Then you can choose it, and then you can just update the properties. So the same goes for JSON. So whenever the files has been uploaded, so you can monitor whoever has uploaded whatever the files and everything. And actions, when you click on it, you can see the details. So what all the users have been updated from this file. So you can see the details. And there is also another tab called templates generated, where whatever the property mapping you have downloaded, so everything will be stored here, and you can see this file has whatever the properties included. So you can see the properties here. You can check the actions, and then you can see the properties here. So as of now, I have updated 3%. So here, so the first is using the Azure property, and the second one is using the template. So when you click on this action, so you can see the user value. So everything is updated. If there is any error, you can see it here, and the empty values are not updated. For example, if you see here, so if you can also provide the empty values in case if you don't want, you have wrongly generated, or for this user you have to update only few properties. For other user, you can update other properties. So all are updated. So the first one is Adelaide Vance. So here, if you, so this is her profile. So when you refresh it, so let it refresh. And the second one is, Lee and then Grady. So this is Lee, and this is Grady. So this is refreshed, and you can see here the city, state, postal code, and country, it is updated. And when you check for Grady, and if you see here for Grady, city 2, state 2, and country 2. When you check here, you can see city, country. So this is the solution. And I have used 2 lists. So this is the property mapping list. So based on this isActive flag, all the properties will be displayed on the property mapping here. So the administrator can go and change the isActive flag instead of deleting the record, so that it will appear only the active properties. And if you have any other custom properties defined in the Azure AD, then you can also add that custom property, a title, the property name, Azure property name, and SP property name. And then this auto sync is nothing but to provide an information to the user whether they are trying to update the auto sync property or not. If they have chosen the auto sync property and then updated with the manual value, so maybe SharePoint UPS will sync automatically. At that time, the auto sync will override it in case if the value is different in Azure AD. So in order to notify that, I have provided the flag called auto sync so that it will notify the user whenever they try to update the property, whichever it is auto sync. And there is one more list called sync jobs, where I'll be storing all the job details, the sync data, whichever the data which is sent back to the Azure function, and then the data sent back from the Azure function. So based on the data, I'll be displaying in the sync status. So this is where I'll be getting the data from this sync jobs. Okay, and let us see. So basically the JSON, whatever the CSV file and the JSON, whatever you are giving it here, it will be transformed to the type here, where it will be sending the target site URL and which item it is, item ID, and whether you have selected the certification or to use the cert or not. And it will transform the values. So this is the value that they have already jobs. And it will be transformed to this value and then send it to the Azure function. And this is the PowerShell script which I have included in my solution. So basically I have created two functions called to connect the SP online. One is using the cert and another one is using the credentials, the service account and then the service account password. So other than that, so I'll be setting the list item once the trigger button is, once the button is clicked, the update property is clicked, then the status will be set to in progress. And after that, I'll be connecting to the admin URL and then I'll be updating the properties. So here where I'll be choosing, because in SharePoint, the department has two values. One is department and another one is SPS department, likewise the title and office. So for this, I have used the if condition to map both the properties, to update both the properties. And then I'll be updating the status with the updated. And if there is any error, I'll be updating the error file, error status. So this is the PowerShell script. So let's dive into the code. So first, this is a web part file where I have defined two functions. One is get user web part properties. As I already mentioned, the web part properties can be editable only by the site administrator. So I have here just used the property web part information control to just display the information to the end user. And another function called get admin web part properties, where I have defined all the controls. So whichever I have shown in the property, I have designed all the controls. And on the property panel configuration start, I have used the SP helper file, which is a custom SP helper file, pass in some parameters, and then I am checking for the site administrator. If it is site administrator, I am loading the admin web part properties. And if it is a normal user, I'm just loading the normal user web part properties. So in the helper file, if you see, I have used PnPjs. So here I have used the selective imports and then the graph for fetching the user information from Azure. So the main function here is using the graph to get the users based on the filter query, which I'll be showing it in the next tab. And the other functions are everything is normal using the SP PnPjs. And one more function is run Azure functions, where I'll be configuring all the URLs and then I'll be sending the calling the Azure function, sending some parameters. So this is how I'll calling the Azure function. And in the actual web part, so here I am using the selected fields, the ID, user, principal, names, and then the whichever the properties you have selected in the property dialog, I'll be mapping it and then joining it, and then I'll be sending the select query to the Graph API. So based on this, the Graph API will fetch the record for the selected users and then with the selected properties. So this is one, and there are two scopes, the Web API permission scopes. One is user.read.all and another one is directory.read.all. So these are all the two scopes I have used. So this is the web part. Hope everyone find is useful. I'm done, Vesa.
Excellent. So, thank you, Sudharsan. Don't close yet. Can we just in case, just to recap, can we go back on the blog post which you showed from me, which is 2 years old, which reminds me how old I am. But basically, just to recap, what's the issue here? So, out of the box in SharePoint Online, you have a user profile and user profile information, which you might want to show in the UX and all of that. But the number 2 is the challenge. So you can modify what attributes from your local Active Directory with number 1 step is being replicated to the Azure Active Directory. But you cannot modify what are the attributes which are getting synchronized from Azure Active Directory to SharePoint service or SharePoint Online service. And that's really the challenge. And that's why we need to have this custom synchronization tools implemented, which are then taking advantage of the bulk import tooling and whatever Sudharsan is implementing in here. So that's really the business scenario. Just to recap, why does this exist? Now, I have to say, super clean implementation, super cool. It shows really nicely how to use Graph, how to use PnP sites, PnP SPFx controls, and many of the other things as well, and panels and pop-ups and all of that stuff. So a lot of powerful scenarios shown in this one. So really great stuff. Thank you, Sudharsan, on that.
Thank you.
Cool. I think that sums up this one. So there was a few questions in the chat window. If you don't mind, Sudharsan, then to address after this one. But I think we are ready to move into the next demo with Sergei and Andrew.
Hello, everyone, and we'll start with a quick introduction. So my name is Sergeev. I've been working with SharePoint and Microsoft 365 for many years, mostly as developer because I love development. And also I'm open source contributor. I contribute to my own projects on GitHub and also on community driven projects. Andrew?
Thank you, Sergei. Just a few words of myself. I do SharePoint as well. So for a pretty long time, I would say like 10 years, or who counts, hey PnP community. Some of you might know me as a guy answering questions about PnPjs, and who doesn't use PnP yet, stop doing it now and go and add it as a dependency on the next project. I also do some stuff not necessarily related to JS, example for Golang, but mostly always connected to SharePoint. And today, which is obvious from the title on this slide, we're covering a concept of styling components within a JS, and to be even more precise, in SharePoint Framework. So let's get started with what's it all about, CSS-in-JS. And what the heck, Sergei? Tell us more, please.
Yeah, in just a few words, we can say that CSS-in-JS, that's just a set of ideas or rules or libraries which allow you to write your CSS styles using JavaScript or TypeScript language.
Cool. I would spotlight that CSS-in-JS is yet another option. So we're not going saying that you should rush and replace the usual CSS routines, but just to consider it as a possibility of applying some CSS-in-JS when it's beneficial for your case. And next, let's take a look why it's even getting popular in the community.
Yeah, that's true that CSS-in-JS, that's not a silver bullet, and that's just a modern alternative to known proven things. But historically, when we talk about just pure CSS, then CSS has some problems, maybe some difficulties. So you can see some of them on the screen. So you don't have, for example, dynamic runtime functionality. You do not have modular architecture. Probably you know about this specificity battles, etc. And that is why you can handle all these situations using CSS-in-JS approach and even more.
And
Sure.
what if many of these issues are also solved in CSS tools? But to be honest, I'm not so good with the CSS to judge this. And maybe some of the attendees as well. So it's even more interesting to get know more. So let's check it out. What are the benefits and drawbacks? What are them?
Yeah, first thing is that you're absolutely right that you can solve all these things using for example, CSS modules or CSS and CSS language extensions like less or SSS. You can use naming conventions. Basically, that's something which is available by default in SharePoint Framework. But additionally, you can use CSS-in-JS as well. Yeah, and when it comes to pros of this new modern approach, then with CSS-in-JS, you receive automatic local scoping, also code intelligence and suggestions. You do not have these problems with specificity. Additionally, that's I think it's quite powerful feature. You can use all language possibilities of JavaScript or TypeScript to use state-based, for example, styling or just some kind of dynamic styling. You can apply refactoring a bit easier. You don't need additional compilers. Also, this approach is really good for component-based frameworks like React, and that's and this idea was created probably because of React. And finally, you have better reusability for your styles.
In my experience, I mostly have no issues with CSS, which would be crashed by all of these pros. However, some of them are really neat to my heart. Maybe on the first position, I would place the possibility of using all the features from JavaScript and apply them to CSS. At the same time, isolating all the domain entity components within a reusable module. And also, which is really important, personally, I feel myself much more productive when applying CSS-in-JS style of coding. But I guess everything has a price. So what should we beware of?
Yeah, sure. There are some trade-offs, and the first and maybe the most common and the most popular drawback is runtime cost. Simply because the CSS-in-JS pattern or CSS-in-JS approach or CSS-in-JS libraries, they use a bit different way of applying styles to a page. Usually they simply inject some required styles in runtime, and also they use special hash calculation functions which calculate some kind of hash based on your CSS style properties. That is why sometimes, for example, if you have a lot of components on your page, hundreds, maybe thousands of components, if you display a list of something, then you might have experience issues if you use CSS-in-JS wrongly. That is why you should pay special attention at this point. Also, you cannot dive into CSS-in-JS libraries without some knowledge. So you should learn how it works, how to do things, etc. You cannot migrate from one CSS-in-JS library to another because there is no such things as interoperability. And also, additional problem is that everybody knows CSS, but only some people knows some CSS-in-JS libraries. That is why every time you introduce CSS-in-JS in your code, then you add some additional layer of complexity.
In my experience, I faced little or no runtime cost ever. However, I apply the concept in moderation, but definitely agree that new toys bring something new to learn. And it's really a true story. When I show CSS-in-JS to my colleagues, some of them scratch their heads and struggle a bit before even accepting the concept. But so far we talked about the concept itself, but not specific tools. Why not to fix it?
Yes, when it comes to libraries, then we can divide all libraries into two big categories. The first one is framework agnostic, and the second one is framework dependent. So we see that when we talk about framework agnostic, then we have emotion, type style, Aphrodite, and some others. And for framework dependent, we also have emotion because, for example, this library can be used in two modes at the same time. So yeah, these are the most, I would say, the most popular libraries.
And these and others, there's actually so many tools out there. I counted at least 19 in awesome CSS-in-JS list on GitHub. And that's a little bit distracting. And should I really use some of them? Some of us probably ask, and these to choose.
That's a really good question. Whether you should use it, whether you should use CSS-in-JS in your next project in general. That's not a simple question. And as you know, and probably as everybody knows, all difficult questions have very simple answer. It depends. Because if you don't have previous experience with CSS-in-JS, then my recommendation would be read more about this new pattern, especially about pros and cons. Then think about if you're happy with your current way of styling components in your code, or if you're just looking for a new ways to style the components. Then you can try to apply this CSS-in-JS pattern to one of your small, maybe medium-sized project and see how it works, if it works for you, if you like it or not. Are there any problems? Are there any benefits, etc.? So that's the answer.
Try.
Yeah,
old-fashioned try. And to make it simpler to try one of the CSS-in-JS libraries together with SPFx. Today we choose two different libraries with different approaches of solving the problem. So let's take a look and dive into the code and demos. Your turn, Sergei.
Yeah, I will start with type style. Type style, that's a framework agnostic library, if you remember from the slide. And that's the home page of the type style, and the API is quite simple, and that's the reason why I like this library. Basically, this style function, that's a core function from core import from type style, and in this function you pass an object which describes your styles, and basically this object contains CSS properties, and the return value of this function just a unique string, and you can later on you apply this unique string to your, for example, React based component like this. I think that this code is very well familiar for you. Additionally, this type style library has a helper method called style sheet. For example, if you want to style the whole component and if you have a few different elements inside your component, then you can simply use style sheet function, which accepts an object with keys, and every key, that's just, as a result, it will be a unique class name. So you call this function like this, where you describe all your elements of your component. And then in your React component, in the same way, and a very similar way to our SharePoint framework, you simply apply these unique classes to corresponding markup. So yeah, this is the demo. So my demo only is slightly simpler than profile sync because I have only one button and you can click, it changes the state. You also can edit section, and you can select different styles for section, and you see that the button changes its styles accordingly. So it reacts to different, or it reacts to theme change event. Now let's go and see how it works from code perspective. So let's start with package.json. So first of all, you should install the dependency. Then let's go and see what is here. Here I have my web part component. And what is the most important thing is that I use theme and I use React built-in context provider in order to push my theme value from my top level web part to all child components, so that on every level in hierarchy I can get my theme value and style my components according to themes from SharePoint. So that's a little trick which gives me this opportunity. Also, I have a code which subscribes to theme change event. So this is the way how I'm able to react to these changes. So every time a user changes a theme, then I call this render method again, and everything is get rendered according to a new theme. And then I have this type style button component. So if I open this folder, then there are two files. The first one is React component itself, and the second one is styles for this component. So here I have a style sheet function that we saw before. And then I have just two keys. That's a root element, and then my button element, and all the CSS styles required for my button. And finally, if you go here, then I use that's just a custom React hook, which returns back styles object with all the properties I defined in my styles.ts file. So in a way which is very similar to SPFx, I simply apply different unique class names to my elements. So if I go here and if I add something different like this, then I can go ahead and simply change the class name here. So you know how it works. And if we open the hook itself, use themed styles, then the hook simply listens to theme changes, and every time you have a different theme, then it applies different styles using create style function. So here, this create styles function, it accepts SharePoint theme, and this is the reason why I can use different colors. And this is the reason why when I change my section background colors, then my background color for button, for example, it also changes from blue to yellow. Yeah, so this is it from my side. Your turn, Andrew.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. I'm going to expose a bit of specific of using style components. That's a pretty popular library out there. It's made specifically for React. Yet React is the thing I use day to day, so it's not a problem for me. Style components have nice site, neat documentation, and great GitHub story. The syntax might be felt sort of funny. However, it's actually an absolutely valid JavaScript. What we can see here is actually called text template literal, and that guy is nothing else but a function. When you import styled, you can define which DOM element type to use, for example, anchor tag, div, span, whatever. And then provide styles this way. In most cases, that styles can be copied from or to SAS modules, and the syntax is mostly the same. At least for me, who barely use 30% of SAS features at all. Not only plain CSS can be here, but also some dynamic part provided via JS callbacks. And the component actually ends up as a usual React component, can be exported, reused, composed, and configured with properties. To use this in SPFx solution, almost none of the opinionated specifics should be cared about. Learning curve for a React developer is actually really tiny, and driven by use case, most can be easily resolved using style component documentation. However, some flavors of SPFx can be added to make solution, for example, theme aware. And my example shows the usage of style component in SPFx, and it's really close, or in some parts even identical to the previous demo held by Sergei. And in my example, I also receive a theme provider using a theme variant using theme provider and try get theme method. Also subscribe for theme change event and pass it down to the styled components. However, in my sample, it's much the usage is much simpler due to the fact that I am meeting some extra complexity like app context, which is really great in the real-life applications. But the idea is to show how to use a specific library within SharePoint Framework. Let's dive to the code. So this part is identical to previously shown. And what it does, it receives the theme and bypass it down to the properties. The style component is represented by this module. Actually receives properties from theme. We can define CSS as in the same manner as if it were SAS module, for example, and we can also bypass these properties. So the properties passed to this component ends up being available in these JS callbacks, and we can receive them using standard JavaScript manner, provide alternative values, and so on and so on. And this component is a reusable unit which can be imported somewhere in the application and used as a wrapper around other parts of the application. Not necessarily should be one single component for all styles, but what's important is that this class, for example, is defined here, so we bypass all the properties from here. And the downside of styled components, which is not actually a huge downside, but the nuance to know is that if you don't install the Visual Studio plugin for dealing with styled components, this part will be just a plain text without any IntelliSense, without helpers about methods, without all this stuff and helpers from the Visual Studio Code and plugin in particular. So to have the best experience with styled component, you got to recall to install Visual Studio Code style components plugin, and then all that features are activated. And let's switch to the SharePoint page. Here we are. And this is our humble web part. And let's go to settings, change the look themes, and select a couple of different themes just to show how it reacts. So the web part using SIM provider receives a new theme and reflects it in the UI automatically and instantly. That's all. So simple. Try to remove all the complexity from the sample. The sample is available on GitHub, will be probably uploaded to samples and be provided somewhere in the link. And finally, no SAS modules suffer during the experiment, demo, and so on.
The whole point, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, show an alternative library to handle the styling, like what Sergei did.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And even more, all the concept of how the library is used in SharePoint Framework are almost identical. So the difference is a little bit. So only the specifics how the library is used. So any documentation for CSS-in-JS, in my case style component, would work for a developer dealing with SharePoint Framework. So nothing new will be brought. So you can replace one library with another, and only the specific of that external implementation will make sense.
Yeah. And one point related on also on the topic that you're covering, that was a really great demo, by the way, Sergei, on the section background handling, because that's really the key on understanding that, okay, so when the end user flips the section background, how do I deal with that in my style? So really, really cool and a simple way of actually doing that. So really cool stuff. And thank you, Andrew, on that. Now, thank you, Sudharsan. Awesome, absolutely brilliant demo on the capability. And thank you, Sergei and Andrew, on that discussion. There was good feedback related on the discussion format and also what you were showing. Super important thing, how do we handle the styling inside of SharePoint Framework components in the way that it's adapting what the SharePoint page is showing, and also how it controls the styling if it's exposed as a Microsoft Teams tab or a personal application. So that's definitely an option as well. Now, we are running out of time, so that's fine. I'm going to just summarize the things. So the recording of the community call will be available within 24 hours in the Microsoft 365 SharePoint Community PnP YouTube channel at AKMS M365 PnP videos. You can follow what's happening in the Microsoft 365 Dev or M365 PnP. Next SharePoint Framework call is within 2 weeks on June 18th, and then next Microsoft 365 General Dev call is on June 11th, so a week from now. And then we have the June monthly community call where we're going to talk about the search extensibility out of the box next Tuesday. So a lot of calls coming up, and obviously all of the calls are getting recorded, all of the demos are getting recorded and published in the YouTube channel as well. So you can easily follow up on what's happening. You do not have to turn on all of these calls. You can always catch up on what's happening in the recordings. But the calls have the advantage of having the chat, which absolutely is beneficial. Now, if we have a look on the whole list of calls, and there's also Adaptive Cars monthly community call, Craft monthly community call, which was this week, Identity monthly community call, Teams monthly community calls, and all of that stuff. Now, we are having an internal discussion in Microsoft. Should we reduce the number of these calls, consolidate, and all of that? Based on the feedback which you gave us actually last within the past survey, the answer was do not reduce the calls. Keep on executing as many calls as there are. Like today, we had 178 was the maximum today on the attendance side. So there's clearly a demand for those calls. And obviously, if you want us to reduce the number of calls, we will start reducing that, but we're trying to figure it out, the balance between these things. No time explicitly for Q&A. We were answering some of the Q&A calls in the chat as we were moving along today. So let's close up. Thank you. And one more time, Sudharsan, Andrew, and Sergei. Great demos, super valuable stuff for sharing for everybody else. For all of the other people attending, if you're interested in doing a live demo, just just ping any of the PnP team members, and we will get you scheduled on any of the upcoming calls as well. AKMS M365 PnP on the top right corner of the screen, just to remind you for the one URL where you can find all of the details related on what's happening, community call invites, the team members, open source stuff from a single location. But thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for lively discussion in the chat window. Thank you for sharing your knowledge between the others in the community. Have a great weekend, and we'll continue. Well, tomorrow is still Friday, which is normally a working day, but anyway, the weekend is coming as well, and we'll be coming back on the SharePoint side on the community calls on Tuesday with that monthly community call. But thank you everybody. Cheers, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.